Mr Deputy Speaker. I also want to thank the Backbench Business Committee on giving us the opportunity to have this debate, and thank the Honourable Member for North Ayrshire and Arran on opening it. A point that I should make clear at the start, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that I was the Minister for Pensions between December 1998 and July 1999, and again between May 2005 and May 2006, which is part of the period covered by the Ombudsman's report. I also want to draw the attention of the House to the evidence my committee, the Work and Pensions Select Committee, took on last week, on the 7th of May, on the Ombudsman's report. We're grateful for all those who gave evidence to us on that morning, and also to the letter that I sent yesterday on behalf of the committee to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, setting out our suggestions for the way forward, and those documents have been tagged for this debate. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Ombudsman opened an investigation into all of this in 2018, 6 years ago. After receiving more than 600 cases, it stopped accepting new ones and selected 6 sample cases, 1 or 2 of which have already been referred to in this debate, and decided to investigate those 6. The investigation was split into 2 stages. The first report, published in July 2021, found maladministration in the way that DWP communicated the changes to affected women. And then there's the further report, the recent one, published in March, concluding that this had meant that, and I quote, some women had lost opportunities to make informed decisions about their finances, which had diminished their sense of personal autonomy and financial control, caused unnecessary stress and anxiety, and unnecessary confusion. I will give way, yeah.
Really grateful. I said at the outset that the honourable gentleman was a distinguished minister, well respected across the House during his various jobs in government. Isn't that the nub of it? So, of course, the decision itself is a matter of debate on pension entitlement, but there's an entirely separate matter about how that decision is communicated, and the injustice is in that failure to communicate. If you change people's circumstances at notice and they have time to deal with it, cope with it, make alternative arrangements is one thing. When you don't give them adequate notice because of their age, it's quite another. And if Disraeli said, I think justice is truth in action, that's the truth of the matter.
I think the Honourable Member is echoing a number of the points the Ombudsman has drawn to our attention. I do think, Mr Deputy Speaker, we should be clear that a lot of people did know about this change. Passing of the legislation was widely reported at the time, nearly 30 years ago. I vividly recall in the first of those 2 stints as Pensions Minister, I spent a fair chunk of most days signing replies to letters from MPs who'd written on behalf of their constituents, the constituents unhappy at this impending change, or calling on the then fairly new government to change it. And the replies I signed were robust and clear that the decision wasn't going to be reversed. So the decision was quite well known, and I do think the Right Honourable Member for New Forest West made a useful point. I do think that citizens have a responsibility to keep themselves informed, listening to the radio, reading the papers about changes to the law that affect them. But what the Ombudsman has established and has made clear in the report is that the department found out at around, I have to say, the second time that I was Pensions Minister, apparently, that only 40% of women knew about the forthcoming pension age change. Now, 40% is a lot of people, but 60% is an even larger number who did not know. The department found that out from some research in 2003-04 and did nothing about it for several years until 2009. And that is the maladministration that the Ombudsman has identified. We don't know why nothing was done, or I certainly don't. The Ombudsman hasn't told us. But I don't think it can credibly be argued that this was not maladministration. To find that information out and do nothing, I think there clearly is a problem. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
grateful for him giving way and giving his own experiences of this matter. Isn't one of the issues that we've got a very clear finding of maladministration, but government acceptance of that does not automatically follow? So we're having a debate today about whether we accept the findings when actually, given the timescales, really we ought to be thinking more about how we implement some of the issues about who's eligible and who isn't.
Yeah, I agree with Brian Orford, and I'm going to come on to that in the discussion the Select Committee had about that last week. Just worth adding, I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the problems caused by that maladministration were then exacerbated by the decision in 2011 to increase the state pension age not to 65, as had been legislated in 1995, but up to 66, and give very little notice at all of that change. Now, the Ombudsman said, had it reported directly to DWP, it would have recommended that DWP apologise for the maladministration and take steps to put things right. As we now all know, the Ombudsman did not report directly to the department because of concern that no remedy would be forthcoming. And the interim Ombudsman, Rebecca Hilsenrath, told the committee last week that her office had been given repeatedly to understand that the department did not accept our findings. And I wonder whether the Minister, in winding up this debate this afternoon, can tell us whether the department does now recognise that there was maladministration in this case. In laying its report before Parliament in March, the Ombudsman asked us in the House to identify an appropriate mechanism for providing a remedy. And it set out its own thinking that the department should firstly acknowledge the maladministration and apologise. Secondly, that should pay financial compensation to the 6 sample complainants at level 4 of its severity of injustice scale. And thirdly, identify a remedy for others who had suffered injustice because of the maladministration. And as we've heard, it estimated that this would involve a sum of between 3.5 and 10.5 billion pounds. I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, we do need to find a resolution to this, and to find it now quite quickly. It has dragged on for a very long time. Angela Madden, the chair of the WASPI committee, told the Select Committee last week about somebody dying every 13 minutes, and it's a powerful point to make. I'll give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I'm very grateful for the right Honourable Gentleman for giving way. I just want to briefly ask him on a point of resolution. Clearly, given the maladministration and the points given by the Ombudsman, the conclusion here needs to happen through a political choice. And that political choice is either the government sitting there or a government which might replace it at some point this year. Surely there must be women in my constituency in Western Berkshire, and everyone's constituency, needs political agreement, not obfuscation, not abdicating responsibility, but now clear political choice.
Hear, hear.
Yes, and the government has said it will respond without undue delay, and that it's considering the report in detail. And I wonder whether the Minister can tell the House this afternoon whether the government will bring forward proposals for remedy, as the Select Committee believes that it should, before the summer recess. I think we should set a clear timetable now for this. We need a scheme that's easy to administer. The Ombudsman said that in principle, redress should reflect the impact on each individual, but it recognised as well that the need to avoid delay and the large numbers involved may, and I quote, may indicate the need for a more standardised approach. And Jane Cowley, the campaign manager of WASPI, told the committee that given the need for action within weeks rather than years, the scheme should be based on, she suggested, 3 principles: speed, simplicity and sensitivity. And I think the evidence that's been gathered does point to a rules-based approach to working out the compensation that should be paid. Yeah.
I thank the member for giving way, and I've read the evidence that he chaired that was taken in April of this year. If there was agreement by the government that they had to accept responsibility for this and to go forward with it, how quickly, in his view, could we start to see the highly justified compensation being paid to these women?
Well, I'm grateful to him. I would hope quite quickly, and I'll explain why now. that the payments involved would be adjusted within a range based on the Ombudsman's severity of injustice scale, the 4.4 on that scale as they've suggested, and it would depend in particular on two variables. Firstly, the extent of change in that individual's state pension age, how much did the age increase for them, and secondly, the notice that that individual received of the change. So the less notice you had of the change, the bigger the change in your state pension age, the higher the payment you would receive. Now, an arrangement like that would not be perfect, but it would be quite quick and relatively inexpensive to administer as well, compared to a more bespoke system, because it would involve applying known data to a formula to work out the amount that was due. So I want to ask the Minister whether he accepts in principle that a rules-based system here would be the best way forward. Beyond that, it was suggested to us that there should be some flexibility for individuals to make the case after the standard payment has been calculated that they experience direct financial loss as a result of the maladministration, and that they should therefore be entitled to a higher level of compensation. Now, the flexibility, I think, would be needed, because although the Ombudsman did not see direct financial loss in the 6 sample complaints it looked at, it didn't exclude the possibility that there could be in other cases. And for example, Angela Madden, again, chair of the WASPI campaign, suggested as an example to us that somebody whose divorce settlement was less than it would have been because it was based on the expectation that she would receive her state pension at age 60 might well have a case that she would be entitled to a larger amount because of that particular development. I will.
I'm grateful to the right Ombudsman for giving way, because this is a very important point that he makes here, and it surely is that if you look at the experience of other compensation schemes, and the one that comes to my mind is the Icelandic trawlerman's compensation scheme, the longer you leave these things, the longer the passage of time, the more difficult it gets actually to resolve them. Does that not just underline the need for speed here?
Well, I agree with him that we do need to get on and resolve this after this very long period. So the Ombudsman suggested a remedy based on level 4 of its severity of injustice scale, based on the finding that individuals had experienced indirect financial loss. We didn't, on the committee, seek to question that view, and I don't intend to do so this afternoon. But regardless of the level of remedy or the means by which remedy is delivered, it is going to need parliamentary time, financial resources, and the data and technical systems only available to the Department for Work and Pensions. Even if a backbench member brings forward a private member's bill, as the Honourable Member for Kilmarnock and Loudon has, that bill cannot become law without government support. It will need a money resolution that only the government can bring forward. So it's not realistic to say that Parliament can resolve this. It must have the government's very, very full-hearted involvement. And while there'll be different views on the findings of the report from the Ombudsman, as the interim Ombudsman told the committee last week, she is appointed by Parliament to carry out these investigations and is accountable to it through the Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee. And I just wanted to read what Carl Bannister from the Ombudsman staff told the committee last week. He said, "We want everyone to comply with our recommendations, but it is implicit in the scheme that because we don't have enforcement powers, it may be sometimes that an organisation thinks it doesn't want to. Then the partnership is that Parliament, as our supervisor, will do something about that." And this is the point I think the Honourable Member from South West Bedfordshire was making earlier on. To continue the quote, "I think what would damage the standing of the Ombudsman is if Parliament declined to do that." So I think it is important for all of us that we do see this through. We've asked the Ombudsman to undertake this role. The Ombudsman has done the job we've asked them to do. Now we need to play our part in ensuring this matter is resolved. So time isn't on our side. The government has been aware of this issue for... yes, I will give
Member is giving an incredibly well-informed speech on this matter, and having met myself with Angela Madden and various WASPI women in Dudley, it is very clearly a highly complicated and difficult issue to resolve, especially if it is necessary for the government to look at appropriate and proportionate remedies for having first then identified those women who have come to harm. Does he agree with me that whatever solution is come to, that the need to really accelerate at pace the work on this incredibly complicated issue is necessary, as those of us of a greater age know that while the clock doesn't stop for anybody, it does certainly seem to accelerate for those of us of a greater age?
Well, I agree with him. I think we do need to get a move on, and that's why I think the government should commit to bringing forward some proposals before the summer recess, so that we all know where we're heading. So that's the point I really want to end with, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I think the government has got all the information it needs. It is a difficult and costly matter, but I do hope the government will be able to bring forward proposals in time for the summer recess of the House.